sometimes I wonder if a lot of folks don't care. I don't know. There's a business and a psychological component to this. Like there's some
Yes.
folks out there that just are not going to be comfortable with the what I would call the reality of beef and butter being healthy. Right? There's a lot of folks go, no, I'm not going to go there.
Yeah,
Right?
I think there's
It
a
would
lot of
it would be yeah. It
psychological
would
discomfort that would come with throwing
yeah.
out the worldview they've constructed.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And you and I, it sounds like we're automatically on the same page that we're not getting hung up on starch.
Right.
And there's a lot of folks who they've got entire careers based off of saying,
Yeah.
carbs are basically poison. If there's a little bit of dextrose in something, you're just killing yourself, right?
I think
I
some
think there's
people,
context to
yeah,
that,
yeah,
but you and I just immediately okay,
yeah.
like we both agree.
So I mean, so
Like
again,
we're not worried about it. Yeah,
yeah. So again,
yeah,
I think of all of this
yeah,
almost like a math problem. I was like, I'm interested in the common denominator. I
yeah,
think
yeah.
there's interesting
That
things
was
that are particular to
yeah,
different populations. I'm a
sure.
population evolution guy. I
Mhm.
find that to be interesting. Some people will have difficulty with starch because they don't have the digestive capacity that some other people
Sure, yeah,
have. But what is the common denominator that's clearly making everybody sick?
yeah,
It can't be the starch in that case.
yeah. So I would hope that there's enough curiosity out there. Now, I guess we need to make it clear why RCT, and I know this is what you said you wanted to get to, but I think that one of our most important goals right now for just the greater scientific community is what kind of human trials you would need.
Yes.
What would like you need to make it almost embarrassing to defend a
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
bad trial.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's limited, right?
Yeah.
It's not just butter versus margarine. No, like it's a low omega-6 diet versus at what I mean, my idea, not my idea, but the idea would be that this is a threshold phenomenon,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Like,
And
at what threshold, and with other elements being important, like relative omega-6. I'm
right.
sorry,
Right.
relative omega-3,
Oxidative stress load.
choline.
Yes.
There's
Yes.
a lot of secondary factors out there
Yeah.
that change the game too.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I'm not a physician scientist by any
Yeah. Yeah.
means, but I
Okay.
know these exist.
But let's unpack some of the details here for people. When we talk about I'm just going to start, and then you can I'll hand it off to you.
Nice.
Fats become incorporated into your membranes and in your fat tissue. They can be saturated, unsaturated, polyunsaturated, and so forth. When the polyunsaturated fatty acids are incorporated into your tissue, they are there, obviously. And if they encounter reactive oxygen species, those radicals will tend to react to them. And that's just sort of brute chemistry. That can and will happen at some point. Obviously, the more reactive oxygen species you generate, and there are many ways you can do that, the greater the chances that you will induce lipid peroxidation. When we say lipid peroxidation, we mean chemistry that takes that PUFA that wasn't necessarily causing you any issue before, and it's creating things that are highly reactive. What do I mean by reactive? I mean something that's going to break stuff in your cells, because that's what we mean by toxic, basically. And just to be crystal clear for people, when we say toxins, we are talking about things like 4-H&E, like acrolein, like MDA. These things are what you find in cigarette smoke. So another thing that confuses me about all of this is we know from the chemistry, basically, that these things can and will be produced to some degree or another as a function of the PUFA load in someone's cell membranes and the reactive oxygen species production they have, how much of it they have. I like to analogize this to a fire, right? If I want to start a fire, I need a fire starter, like a lighter or a match or something. That's like your reactive oxygen species. I also need a lot of flammable material. My house right now, if I just put a lighter up to the wall, it probably won't ignite the whole house on fire. But if I start crinkling up newspaper and putting it all over the floor, now a lighter can ignite the whole house on fire. So all of these forces, need to be at the right levels for real damage to start. But at the end of the day, we're talking about chemistry that where reactive oxygen species react with the PUFAs to create the same types of toxic molecules that everybody would otherwise agree are totally toxic.
Yeah, and that's a great analogy, because what you mentioned, 4-H&E and MDA and other things, when we say toxins, it doesn't mean that there should never be any of that ever.
Yes.
There's actually a evolutionarily consistent level that that plays a part in normal cell death.
Yes, yes.
Right.
Same for reactive oxygen species production.
Yep. It's complete, which is, I think that it's real. I remember, I think it was a neurologist, a researcher neurologist, when we were talking about ketogenic diets. Like I started really kind of when, in a little bit of free time while I was shadowing, this is before medical school, I started bringing up like random biochemical things, right?
Yeah.
And I remember he made a point to say, well, you can really talk about this kind of stuff all day, but it doesn't always play out in human beings, right? And so that's the camps that you have out there is the rigid world of, okay, what do the trials show us?
Yep.
And that's it.
If it's not in a trial that's published in the New England Journal of Medicine, it can't possibly be real.
Yeah, it's just or it doesn't matter, right? And then there's the esoteric world of the internet, right? In general, just from what we experience. Like you go to the doctor and they're just going to tell you something plain, or you go on the internet. And it doesn't always mean that one's completely right or one's completely wrong. Right?
Yes. Yes.
So you can really speculate on a lot of different processes out there, right?
Yep.
The reason why I think it's so important to talk about the rubber hits the road part is that it's hard to downplay that, right? Like you could use the word insulin sensitive versus resistant, and there's like certain things you can do where something like transiently becomes more one or the other, but then what is exactly pathological insulin resistance? You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Right. But it's hard to say, well, you kind of have fibrosis. Well, fibrosis is a big deal.
Right,
or you kind of have cell death, or you kind of have oxidation of cardiolipin.
Your dopamine neuron died.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You're getting Parkinson's disease, right? It's hard to downplay that.